state representative seat that encompasses Winthrop and parts of Revere, Ward 1, Precincts 1 and 2, Ward 2, Ward 3, Precincts 2 and 3, Ward 5, Precinct 3. The primary election is Tuesday, March 2nd, and the special election is Tuesday, March 30th. Voters are reminded to check the requirements due to the pandemic for voting, such as wearing a face mask. The debate is being brought to you by Revere TV and the Revere Journal. My name is Stephen Quigley, the publisher of the Revere Journal, and I will be the moderator for this evening's debate. Just for clarification, the candidates are not wearing masks because this debate is being held via Zoom. The moderator is not wearing a mask, but is more than 12 feet from everyone else in the studio. Now for the format of the debate. Each candidate, in alphabetical order, will present an opening statement. I then will ask the candidates a series of 4 questions which have been given to them ahead of time. We will proceed in successive alphabetical order through the 4 questions so that each candidate will have the opportunity to be the first to answer a question. In addition, each candidate has been asked to submit a question to the moderator, to which all of the candidates, including the candidate who put forth a question, will provide an answer. The candidates have not been provided with these questions, which must be different than the questions I will be asking. Once again, we will proceed in this phase of the debate in successive alphabetical order. Each candidate then will provide a closing statement in reverse alphabetical order. The candidates will have a strict limitation of 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements for all of their responses to the questions. So to start, first up is Tino Capianco and his opening statement. Welcome, Tino.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and our friends at the Revere Journal and Revere TV for putting this debate on, and my friends and opponents for taking the time to do this and actually enter this race. I know it's been tough on each one of our families. My name is Valentino Capobianco. I'm a candidate for state representative in the 19th Suffolk District, and I'm running to get our community back on its feet after COVID-19. We need to strengthen our public schools and provide quality and affordable health care for all. I'm in this race because my grandfather, Ralph Capobianco, Nani is all that knew him, is my hero. He did not have the opportunity to attend public school as a child. His first job was at 5 years old, shining shoes at Scully Square in downtown Boston. He married young and raised his family in his first apartment at the Maverick Square projects in East Boston. He served his country in World War II, and when he came home, he bought a triple-decker on Falcon Street in the Eagle Hill section of East Boston. He worked his entire life and retired at 85 years old as a custodian in the Boston Public Schools District. And he instilled a set of values in me that made me the man I am today. And our story is a story of the American dream and opportunity. Opportunity to have clean air, a strong environment, great healthcare system, and strong public school system. And that's what I want to do as a state representative. Big issues aside, I learned as an aide to Speaker DeLeo the importance of constituent services. The number one issue a state representative has to do is to fight for their district, fight for Winthrop, and fight for Revere, and know that when a constituent calls with a problem, it's our job to take the call and then make the call to resolve the issue. And during this time of crisis, experience matters, and I'm ready to work for you on day one. My name is Valentino Capobianco. I am asking for your vote on Tuesday, March 2nd, for state representative.
Thank you, Tino. The next candidate is Alicia Del Vento.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you to the Revere Journal, Revere TV, and everyone here for joining us tonight. And thank you for everyone who made this opportunity to speak with you possible. I also want to thank Speaker DeLeo for his incredible service to our community. My story began right here in our community, in a family of community activists and hardworking union Democrats. I am fighting for a brighter future for Revere and Winthrop, which means one for all of us, including those newer to our community. Because Revere welcomed my Nani when she fled Italy, and Winthrop welcomed my grandfather Joe after he served in World War II, allowing him to build Stacio Lumberyard, which served our community for decades. I'm a proud product of public education, and this community is where I learned to fight for bold, compassionate policies that help my friends and neighbors. My passion has always been healthy communities. It's led me to pursue a Bachelor's of Science in Health Management and Policy and currently a Master's of Public Health. It also led me to spend the last 4 years with the Massachusetts House of Representatives. This includes extensive work on the committees of House Ways and Means, which decides the annual budget, healthcare financing, and on the COVID-19 Economic Relief Task Force. I see the challenges facing us as connected through the need for an equitable public health approach. We don't have healthy communities if our schools are not funded properly, if our air and water are not clean, if our transportation system is broken, or if the working people in our district can no longer afford to live here. This is not a part-time job. I am running because we need a fighter on Beacon Hill, someone who can roll up her sleeves and get to work full-time to deliver for our community. From day one, you will have a representative who understands the State House and will deliver for us. I look forward to working with all of you to build a brighter future for Revere, Winthrop, and all of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. The next candidate is Juan Harimillo.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me. Thank you to the Revere TV and to the Revere Journal for hosting this forum. My name is Juan Harimillo, and I'm running to be your representative for Winthrop and Revere. I was a child when I first immigrated to the United States, and I landed right here at the corner of Harris and Beach Street. My parents and I were fleeing violence, and this community fed us, it clothed us, and it embraced us. This is where I learned the values of hard work and determination. My parents each worked 80 hours a week to provide. And as a young person, I never quite understood why people who worked the hardest struggled the most. Why parents needing to provide for their children often had to sacrifice spending time with them to make ends meet. And that's what sparked my interest in public service. So I began organizing right here in the streets of Revere with the organization called Revere Youth in Action to fight for and deliver paid family and medical leave and raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Both things that are happening now in the Commonwealth. Look, the challenges ahead of us are difficult. We're in the face of a public health crisis that has disproportionately affected the residents of Revere and Winthrop, and an economic downturn, while facing an existential climate threat. These times call for a full... Yep.
I think you're up. You went over the 2 minutes.
Okay, well...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
Can I start?
Yes. Yes.
Look, the challenges ahead of us are difficult. We're in the face of a public health crisis and an economic downturn while facing the existential threat of climate change. Now, these times call for a bold leader that knows how to deliver for Winthrop and Revere. And that's what I've been doing. As budget director for State Senator Joe Boncore, your state senator, I've been fighting for millions of dollars for coastal resiliency projects. I delivered the funding to expand access to the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center to you and your family. I got the seed funding money for the Revere Substance Use Disorder Initiative. I know how to get stuff done. And as political coordinator for the largest labor union in the country, I worked with the federal delegations of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts to deliver working families a $1,200 stimulus check. Further, I helped deliver the PPP loans for small businesses so they can keep their lights on, and the personal protective gear so that workers can go back to work safely. I know the values of our communities and our needs. I've delivered and organized around them my entire life. And I'm proud to be part of the community that saved my life. Revere. These times call for a leader that can deliver the transformational change we need. And I'm running to be that leader on your behalf at Beacon Hill. On March 2nd, I hope you'll vote for me, the only Revere candidate on the ballot, Juan Harimillo. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan, and I apologize for interrupting you. The last candidate is going to be Jeff Turco.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Revere TV and the Revere Journal, thanks for putting this together. Thank my fellow candidates. So my name is Jeff Turco. I was born and raised in Revere for 33 years of my life. I grew up on Reservoir Avenue. When I was about 12 years old, my parents got divorced and we moved to Walnut Ave, and then we moved to the Coolidge Street Housing Project before I ultimately moved down to Sagamore Street. So I spent 33 years of my life in Revere. And at that time, I married, I found a woman and fell in love with her, West Revere gal, Melissa Carboni, now Melissa Turco. And we got married and moved to Winthrop. We were raising our 6 children. But I've never left Revere. During my the last 16 years of living in Winthrop, I've served 15 years on the McCarthy-Trifoni Recreation Committee, raising money for youth sports that we've given back to the community so we could lower sport athletic fees for the children of Revere so that people that have financial hardship have an opportunity to play sports that they might not otherwise do, because we all know that if you participate in sports and team activities, it builds character, it builds a sense of purpose, and it keeps kids out of trouble. And so that's why the work of the McCarthy-Trifoni Recreation Committee is so important. The last 7 years I just completed 7 years on the board of the Revere Beach Partnership, including the last 3 as president of the board. And I got involved in that because one of my childhood friends who no longer lives in Revere but loves Revere picked up the phone and said, look, we're looking for people that love Revere, that know Revere, that want to change the image of Revere, and we're going to do that through the Revere Beach Partnership. And so I was honored to serve for 7 years on the board of the Revere Beach Partnership. As I said, I have 6 children, ages 15 to 4. My kids all went through it. So far, 5 of them have gone through Immaculate Conception School. 3 of them are still there. 2 of them are at Malden Catholic, and 1 will start IC in the fall. There are so many critical issues facing this race, and we're going to talk about those large tonight, and we'll deal with them in our closings as well. But the most important issue I see right now in the city of Revere is the need to get the schools open. Enough of the political pandering, enough of the vacillating. Our children are being hurt by the schools not being open. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Second part of the debate, which is questions that have been handed to each candidate. And we're going to go in alphabetical order. So this first question, Tina will start us off, and then it'll be Tino, Alicia, Juan, and Jeff. It deals with climate change. Climate change represents a threat to our communities of Winthrop and Revere. Do you believe the state is doing enough to address this issue? And if not, what would you propose should be done to strengthen the state's response to this issue? Tino, you're the first up.
Thank you. We must lead on these issues at the State House. We have a duty to address inequalities in our community, and in this district, we're bearing the brunt of environmental burdens. More money needs to be going into investing in green projects and frontline communities, just in Winthrop and Revere. We have to transition away from fossil fuels, and that means investing in our public transit system and renewable energy to make it accessible and affordable for all. That's why I'm honored to receive the endorsement and support today of our Carmen's Union Local 589 and our MBTA Inspectors Union Local 600. We're actually working on our MBTA. That's why I also support extending the blue line from Wonderland to Lynn, which will also help our community college students. These projects will bring well-paying union jobs in our neighborhood, and we need to keep environmental protection and climate change in mind with all new development. Winthrop High School is a great example of this. It could extend sea level rise, and as chairman of the school committee, I helped produce clean energy by adding solar systems on its unused roof, because I believe that leaders need to lead by example, and investing in renewable energy shows a great example of how leaders could get real results and save our air quality in our community.
Thank you, Tino. The next question, the same question is directed to Alicia. Do you need me to reread the question, or are you all set?
No, I think I'm all set. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Climate change is the crisis of our time, and we are not doing enough to stop it. We have to stop tackling climate change in a silo. We have to acknowledge that environmental justice is linked to racial justice, economic justice, and health justice. It's one of the many reasons why I was the lead organizer for Ed Markey, fighting day in and day out in Winthrop to keep fighting for the Green New Deal. The road along Short Beach used to be closed for flooding every couple of years, and now it's every couple times per year. When I worked in the House, we made some progress, passing the greenest budget in Massachusetts history that included millions of dollars for beaches like Winthrop and Revere. As our next representative, this is what I would do to fight for our planet. I'd work to make sure that we fund our environmental protection agencies and fully support the Environmental League of Massachusetts green budget push. Another thing I support is the Green Works bill passed in the House last year, but was not taken up by the Senate. that included $1.3 billion bond funding to both mitigate and immediately take up the impacts and provide resiliency and mitigation against future impacts. This would allow cities and towns like Revere grants to mitigate within their municipality. It would also invest $325 million in other municipal green projects. We must have a just transition from fossil fuels to renewables. And that's why I was proud to say I took the fossil fuel money pledge. We have to make sure that we're transitioning to renewable energy in a just manner. And I'm excited to work with advocates within the community to make sure that we're holding institutions and groups like the Wheelabrator accountable to make sure that they do not continue to harm the folks of Revere like they continue to do.
Thank you, Alicia. The next one is Juan. Do you need me to reread the question, or are you good?
All set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Climate change is the challenge of our times. That's why when I'm your state rep, I'll be fighting to pass the environmental bill that's sitting in the legislature right now. But I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been working on. As political coordinator of the largest labor union in the country, the first union to endorse the Green New Deal, I've been fighting to ensure that our communities have a just transition to green technology. We need to ensure that we're divesting from fossil fuels, including in our own pension system, and transitioning to clean energy by 2030. We do that by lifting the solar cap to ensure that every person that owns a home can produce some of their own energy, which will lower their costs. Further, we'll need to invest in wind and take advantage of our coastal communities to ensure that we're investing in wind energy. Lastly, we have to ensure that we're strengthening our transportation system. That's why I support the connection of the red-blue connector to ensure that we have less congestion and less car usage so that people can live in Revere and work in Cambridge and vice versa and have reliable transportation. I'm going to make sure that we remove the tax on the working people by making the MBTA free so that we continue to encourage clean ways to get around in public transportation. These are the important issues that we have to continue to work on, and holding Massport and Wheelabrator accountable for their high causing the high COPD rates and asthma rates in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. The next question, the same question is posed to Jeff Turco.
Yes.
Do you need me to repeat it?
No, of course. I'm all set. Thank you very much. So look, the legislature at the end of last session passed a climate change bill. The governor sent it back with amendments effectively vetoing it. That bill was recently passed again by the legislature and ultimately will go to the governor for him to make a decision on. That bill is a great first step. I'm proud to be endorsed by former state representative Rosalie Vincent, who was the original co-sponsor of the environmental justice provisions in that bill. Rosalie took the lead fighting the injustice to our area and the environmental damage that's being caused by Wheelabrator on a daily basis. If Wheelabrator were in Shrewsbury or other community, Westboro or Weston, we wouldn't have a discussion. DEP would have shut it down decades ago when it should have been shut down. I look forward to working with Representative Giannino to continue the fight led by former Representative Rosalie Vincent. The environmental bill that was passed and that will be passed over the governor's veto includes very aggressive timeframes of 2050 to be zero emissions. I think this area of Revere, most people might not remember this, but in 1984, former state representative Butch Cataldo took the lead on bringing hydroelectric power from Canada. And people mocked him at the time, but he was a man before his time by saying we need to get clean energy into this area and bring hydroelectric power here. We need geothermal heat for all new construction, large scale projects. We need wind and solar. That's what the Commonwealth needs to work on. I look forward to working on that. We also need to expand the MBTA, the commuter rail station. I've talked to some of the city councilors in Revere about the need to expand the commuter rail to Revere and connect it over to Wonderland. Senator Boncory's working on that as chairman of the Transportation Committee to get bond money to make sure that that happens so that we take cars off the road and get people to and from Boston without polluting our atmosphere. I look forward to working on these issues as your state representative and continuing the proud tradition of Butch Cataldo and Rosalie Vincent on making sure that the environment is protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. This is the second question, so Alicia will be the first one to answer it. And it deals with income tax. Do you favor a graduated state income tax? A question that may be on the ballot in 2022. If so, why? If not, why not? Alicia?
Thank you. Yes, I support the Fair Share Amendment that would put a tax on multimillionaires so that they pay their fair share. The reason's simple. It ensures that those making more than 30 times the amount the average person in Revere makes aren't paying less in taxes. For years, those in the top 1% have been able to use a loophole to pay less than the average family in Revere and Winthrop. By passing this amendment, we can take a big step towards building a system where the quality of our public education doesn't depend on where you go to school. One of my closest friends is a kindergarten teacher at the Lincoln School. And when she tells me that there aren't librarians so that the students can't check out books because of budget shortfalls all across the Commonwealth, we have to do better for our kids. And to me, that has to start with ensuring everyone pays their fair share. So we can ensure that our public schools, our public transit, and our environment have that critical investment.
Thank you, Alicia. Juan?
Yes,
You're-
thank you
you're
for
in-
the question.
Do you need the question?
No, all set. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So we just talked about climate change and things we need to do. Now we're talking about how we should fund them. I absolutely support the Fair Share Amendment to ensure that people like Jeff Bezos, who are doing business in our community, are paying their fair share to our community. That the corporations that are lining their pockets while our workers here in Revere and Winthrop are losing their jobs and joining the unemployment rank are paying enough so that we can ensure to take care for these folks. That's why I've been proudly endorsed by the Massachusetts Teachers Union, which represents all of the teachers of Revere and Winthrop. Because when I was in the legislature, I worked with them to ensure that that our schools our public schools are fully funded. Because I'm a proud product of the Revere Public Schools. That's why I've gotten the endorsement of Carol Ty, a school committee woman, Susan Gravelisi, and Stacy Rizzo, because they believe in my commitment to our community. So absolutely, if we're serious about fully funding our public schools, about investing in our public transportation infrastructure, and tackling climate change, then we need to ensure that the people that are doing well off are making the contribution to our community to fill all our needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Next up is Jeff.
Yes.
Do you need to repeat the question?
No, I'm all set. So there's really two. I mean, your question actually is generally, do you favor graduated state income tax? Yes, I favor the Fair Share Amendment, but I do not favor, generally speaking, a graduated income tax. So the Fair Share Amendment puts a surtax, I believe 4% on people making over $1 million in annual income. I support that amendment. I will vote for that as a legislator. And when it comes on the ballot, I'll vote for it because that will generate needed revenue that can then be used to fund education, healthcare, and transportation in the Commonwealth. But as a secondary question of do you support a graduate income tax, aside from people making over $1 million, the answer is absolutely not. The people of this district and the people of the Commonwealth have voted it down, I believe, 4 or 5 times in the last 30 years. And, you know, the last time there was set rates in there saying this is what we promise it'll be, and that ultimately got voted down, I believe, 2-1. And so I do not support a graduated income tax, but I do support the Fair Share Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. The last one, Tino?
Thank you, and I'm all set. I don't need you to repeat the question. I wholeheartedly support progressive taxation, and I will co-sponsor the Fair Share Amendment as a legislator and fight for it at the ballot box. The Fair Share Amendment would provide an additional tax of just 4 percentage points on a person's annual income above $1 million. And I'll not hesitate to support proposals that ask the wealthy corporations like Amazon to pay more so that we can better support regular working people like our neighbors in Winthrop and Revere. Those in the top 1% had benefited enough in federal, state, and federal tax cuts for the past 4 years during Trump's presidency. For example, the Federal CARES Act included $135 billion in tax breaks for wealthy business owners. With just a 4% tax, we'd be able to provide critical funding for our public schools, green infrastructure projects, and alternative affordable housing. As your next state representative, I pledge to be accessible, honest, and transparent when it comes to the tough issues in advocacy and constituent services. And that's why I'm ready to lead on day one.
Thank you, Tino. Now we go to the third question, and Juan will be the first one to answer this. And the question is, With the state potentially facing a budget shortfall because of a decline in revenues attributed to COVID-19, how should the state make up the gap? For example, would you favor a reduction in local aid, utilizing the rainy day fund, or raising taxes?
Thank you for your question. So we absolutely, we have a rainy day fund for a reason. We are in the rain right now. We have to ensure that we're utilizing that so we can continue to invest in local aid. Local aid means that the work that I did in the legislature to fund the Revere Substance Use Disorder Initiative alongside Senator Boncory and Speaker DeLeo gets funded and continues to get funded in the next few years. Local aid means that the same work that I did with Speaker DeLeo and Senator Joe Boncory to fund access to the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center for the Revere Winthrop community continues to get funded. So, these are the things I would advocate for to ensure that we're using the rainy day fund to ensure that we're fully funding these things. Further, I would say that we have to also support the fair share amendment. Like I just said in the last question, it's something that I'll be advocating for as a person that works in the labor movement. It's something that I've advocated for a long time, including with my work in Revere Youth in Action, to ensure that we have all the money that we make. That we have the money we need for the critical services that we provide. Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Jeff, you're next.
Yes.
Do you need
Yes.
the question repeated?
No, I'm all set. Thank you very much. So one of the first things that a legislator has to do is educate themselves and learn what the numbers are. Because if you don't get down and dirty and look at the state tax revenue numbers, you can't make informed decisions about the policies that you're going to make, including whether to use the rainy day fund. I'd be opposed to cutting local aid. I'm opposed to there's a 7-year commitment to fully fund public education in this Commonwealth that was made under Speaker DeLeo's leadership. Some talk of using COVID as an excuse. Commonwealth of Massachusetts from January
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Does the audience know it? Okay, should he start over again?
If you would like me to go and then have him go after for just
Oh,
to save time,
if you could, is that all right?
Sure. Could you mind repeating the question?
Not at all. Okay. This one is to Tino. We're having a little problem with the connection with Jeff Turco, so Tino's going to jump in while we figure this out. The question is, with the state potentially facing a budget shortfall because of a decline in revenues attributed to COVID-19, how should the state make up the gap? For example, would you favor a reduction in local aid, utilizing the rainy day fund, raising taxes?
Thank you. I think the rainy day fund needs to be used for situations just like this. It gives funding to vital programs in its time of crisis. And I support expanding revenue by lifting regulations on sports betting, because Massachusetts is losing out to neighboring states every day. But expand gambling addiction services need to be fully funded in tandem with that. And during this time of crisis, workers have to be front and center for any aid provided by the government that goes directly to businesses. This aid will go directly to providing safe and healthy working environments and fair wages, so workers should not have to use their personal days while quarantining, and that's why I support emergency paid sick time. In addition to help workers recover from this pandemic, I support increasing minimum wage beyond $15 an hour and reinstating time and a half on Sundays for our retail workers who are at the front line of this pandemic. That right was taken away from us a few years ago with the grand bargain, and that needs to be reinstated immediately.
Thank you, Tino. Jeff?
Yes.
Do you
I
want
don't
to
know what happened. So, yeah, please. Thank you very much.
start from your beginning.
All right, thank you. I thank you for indulging me, my fellow candidates, and for my technical glitch. But this is a great, even though the question deals with revenue, this is a great example of why the public schools need to be open. They need to be open now. Imagine school kids sitting there on a Zoom trying to learn, and the internet breaks out on them because the bandwidth doesn't work in their house or in their neighborhood. Imagine a teacher trying to teach a lesson and constantly being interrupted by internet difficulties. So this is a great reminder what just happened as to why we need to open our public schools. But with respect to the Commonwealth's position, the first thing I'll do as a state representative is get down and dirty and learn the numbers. So one of the things I did today was I looked at the Department of Revenue benchmark numbers for the Commonwealth. Our fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th. From July 1st through January 31st, the Commonwealth has brought in $764 million more than last year, 4.5% more than it did last year, above the benchmark numbers that the budget is made on. In fact, the revenue has come in so well that the Commonwealth on January 15th raised its benchmark number, which is what it bases its budget on, by almost $700 million. And so we need to get the information so we as legislators can make informed decisions to make sure we fully fund the seven-year obligation to fund public education, to make sure we fully fund local aid, to make sure we fully fund our transportation program in the Commonwealth. Information is power. And the perception is that we've lost money, but truth be told, the Commonwealth's own numbers reported by the Department of Revenue show a $764 million increase from July 1 to January 30th over last year's numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And now we go to Alicia. Do you need me to repeat the question, Alicia?
I'm all set. Thank you, though. First and foremost, I will not support raising taxes on our working class families here in Revere and Winthrop, especially not now after they have been hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many in our community have lost their jobs and are worried about where their next paycheck may come from and how they're going to pay for their kids' next meal. Over the last year, working for a member of the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Task Force in the House, I've not only been able to help folks navigate the incredibly confusing unemployment system, but also have paid very close attention to what we can do to come back stronger from COVID-19. And here's what I think. First and foremost, utilizing the Rainy Day Fund. Under Speaker DeLeo's leadership, when I worked in the House for the House Ways and Means Committee, we passed balanced budgets that invested in a total more of $500 million in the Commonwealth Stabilization Fund, also called the Rainy Day Fund, specifically to ensure that we will never be put in a situation to cut local aid like Chapter 70 for our schools or Chapter 90 funding for our roads and bridges. We must also, as a state, pass an economic recovery bill. We need a comprehensive bill that helps those that have lost their job to pay their bills and get back to work and focus on helping our small businesses and not large corporations. We are so lucky in Revere and Winthrop to have so many great small businesses who are rooted here in our community, who are residents of our community, and we must protect them so they don't just survive, they thrive. And we must also make sure that massive corporations are not using tax loopholes that deny our Commonwealth $1 billion annually, revenue that our municipality budgets should have. Billion-dollar corporations like Amazon may be sending us our packages, but they're paying less in taxes than the hardworking members of our community that are working there. And I promise to fight day in and day out for the working people of Revere and Winthrop.
Thank you, Alicia. Our next part of the forum is each candidate had their own question that will be asked of all the other candidates, and they will themselves give their answer. So the first one up, the first question to be read is Tino. I will read the question, then Tino will answer it, and then it will go in alphabetical order after that. So Tino writes, what should be done and what have you done to strengthen our public school system? Tino?
Thank you. This is a very timely question. So I want to go back to what my friend Mr. Turco said a minute ago. Yes, kids need to be back in school. I live with this as a school committee member every day, and that's why I agree with President Biden that we need to have kids back in school safely for the next 100 days. I know what it's like to get that call saying that we lost 2 students and a teacher to this virus. That happened to me as a member of the Shore Collaborative Board of Trustees. I know what it's like to hear the fear in teachers' voice and the crack when they talk about the fear of in-person learning or the fear from parents or the child's social and emotional health. It's a real thing, and we need to be in this together. And I think Winthrop has done a pretty good job of reopening hybrid learning sooner than most communities. And it's been so far so good, and it has been safe. And I think we're going to get there fully in the first week of March when Superintendent Howard presents her reopening plan, which I plan on supporting. During my time on the school committee, I helped expand our full 3-day kindergarten program by maintaining and investing in a teacher's aide in each class. We also implemented a pre-K program. It's called the Little Vikings. And I also supported both Winthrop's Worth It's campaign for the new middle high school. And I was the only elected official at the time in favor of the athletic complex that made sure that was open to the entire community. And during all this, I made sure our teachers do not have to have a hometown discount by negotiating multiple contracts that led in a 16% pay increase with early retirement incentives, 0 layoffs, and all of this was done without a Proposition 2.5 override. I'm proud to be a Winthrop High School graduate. I'm proud of the education I had in the Winthrop Public Schools, and I'm proud to fight for the Winthrop and Revere Public Schools as your next state representative.
Thank you, Tino. Alicia, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm all set. Thank you, though. I'm a proud product of public education from K to 12 in Winthrop, as well as my undergraduate degree at the University of New Hampshire. COVID has impacted families, children, and all educators. And our world is not the same, and education won't be the same. And as I've been saying throughout this whole campaign, we shouldn't be putting Band-Aids on situations. We need to make sure that the education our children receive in 2022 is better than it was in 2019, because a lot of our inequities have been exacerbated due to this pandemic. A lot of issues we knew were already there. I know we can fully fund education because we have already taken those big steps already. I was proud when I worked in the House, we passed a budget with the largest year-over-year increase in Chapter 70 funding in the last 2 decades. We took another step when we passed the Student Opportunity Act last year. And as our next state representative, one of my top priorities is fully funding the Student Opportunity Act to make sure all children, regardless of race or means or zip code, have the opportunities in education to open doors. And we must expand our opportunities. That includes investment in social emotional learning and funding those resources. That means passing the Healthy Youth Act to update our sexual education curriculum. And that means investing in debt-free public higher education to make sure that everyone has those opportunities. I've done this work working in the House of Representatives, as well as previously working on after-school and out-of-school time policy. I know the importance that it has in our community, and I'm dedicated to fighting hand in hand with our educators. That's why I'm proud to have the support of the president of the Winthrop Teachers Union and so many Winthrop and Revere educators who believe in this campaign and who believe in to send a fighter to Beacon Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Juan, your turn. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I am a proud product of the Revere Public School System. The Revere Public School System invested in me, and that's why I'm here with you today, to represent the people of our district. I'm a graduate of Revere High School class of 2012, and I made the intentional decision to go to a public school when I graduated high school, and I graduated from UMass Boston, because I believe in our public education system and what it can do for people like me. That's why I'm proud to say that I've been endorsed by the Boston Teachers Union and the Massachusetts Teachers Union, which represents all of the teachers of Revere and Winthrop. With them, with students, and with parents, we're going to ensure that we get our kids back to school as soon as possible while protecting the people that are teaching. Further, as the legislative and policy director for Senator Joe Boncore, I actually worked on the Student Opportunity Act to ensure that we're fully funding our public schools. And we have to continue that commitment. I also support the Healthy Youth Act, and I've worked with other colleagues in the legislature to ensure that that moves along. And as your state legislator, I will continue to advocate for these measures. I'm so proud to be a patriot. And come March 2nd, we'll have a patriot in this seat because of the investments that you have made. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Jeff?
Yes.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm all set. Thank you very much. So
Okay.
as I said earlier in my opening, I went to the McKinley School, kindergarten through 8th grade. I went to Northeast Regional Vocational School my freshman year before transferring to Malden Catholic, and also went to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I am a product of public education, by and large, with the exception of the Malden Catholic experience. I wouldn't be speaking to you now if it weren't for the teachers at the McKinley School, K through 8, like Mr. George Kingston, God rest his soul, and Dr. McDonough, and Miss Sack, and Miss Beninati, those teachers that took a kid who had a major speech problem that they thought had a stroke at birth and said, kid, we're going to get you to learn to speak. And the Revere Public Schools sent me off to Chelsea Memorial Hospital to do major speech pathology so that I could learn to speak and have this communication with you tonight. I am forever indebted to them. Every time I go to court or every time I speak to a group, I think of those people that when I was the belligerent kid that said, no, I'm not going to balance Cheerios on my tongue, they were the ones that said, shut up and do it. You're going to do this. You're going to make something of yourselves. And I wouldn't be here today. But what did I do? You know, that's part of why I felt an obligation to make sure that our public education system is working. And one of the ways it works is by being open. It's been a year now. It's simply not acceptable to say tomorrow, we'll do this tomorrow, we'll do this tomorrow. It needs to be done, it needs to be done now. But with respect to the Winter Public Schools, I'm very proud of my record there. We signed a 3-year contract with our Winter Public School teachers, settling after they hadn't had a contract for a couple of years. We went to the principal at the Gorman Fort Bank School and said, how can we improve public education? She said, lower my class size. So we put a limit on class size for the Gorman Fort Bank School. Most importantly, it was under my leadership that the Winter Public Schools used to charge families $2,300 per child to go to full-day kindergarten. It was under my leadership that the school committee rescinded and sent back almost $300,000 of tuition money to parents and made the program free. Why did we do it? Because every year thereafter, Winthrop gets almost $4,000 per kid from the state, instead of getting $2,300 per kid from the parents. That's what smart decision making makes. That's why the Winter Public Schools has extra resources today that they didn't have years ago because of bold
Jeff,
leadership.
your 2 minutes? Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, now, next question coming up is from Alicia. So I'll ask the question and then she'll answer it, then we'll go alphabetical after that. Then we'll go in the order. Okay, Alicia's question is, the Commonwealth has been hit hard by COVID-19, with the health and well-being of many that call Revere home being especially negatively impacted. What specific actions would you take as state representative to ensure the Commonwealth's COVID-19 response focuses on Revere and Winthrop? Alicia?
Thank you, Stephen. First of all, thank you to everyone on the front lines of COVID-19 pandemic that has been working day in and day out to fight this horrible virus. To date, over 11,000 people in Revere and Winthrop have been infected by COVID-19. And to be honest, I have been completely horrified by the Commonwealth's response over these last couple of months when it comes to the vaccination. I am proud to say I'm the only candidate with a comprehensive plan to fight COVID-19 that not only fixes the deep flaws in our system, like with the current system that relies on a website that crashed today while our seniors are trying to sign up to receive potentially life-saving vaccines, but also provides critical resources and steps to take to increase our funding for community health centers, to expand mental health services, and to increase pay for frontline workers. And as our next state representative, this is what I would do. My first call after being elected would be to our local leaders in Winthrop and Revere, like Mayor Arrigo, whose team has stepped up when the Commonwealth's plan was failing and personally jumped on the phones to make sure our seniors had all the information they needed to receive to make sure they got the life-saving COVID-19 vaccination. To make sure that they know this team and I can work hand in hand from day one to ensure the city of Revere and the town of Winthrop have the resources they need to fight the virus. My second call would be to Speaker Mariano, who I worked with when he was Majority Leader Mariano, and asked to be on the COVID-19 Oversight Committee that he and Senate President Spilka announced the other day, to put my public health background to work on day one and to hold Governor Baker accountable to ensure Winthrop and Revere are no longer treated like an afterthought in the fight back against COVID-19. And my third call will be to fellow state representatives to get co-sponsors to implement my plan. Those who know me know I'm a workhorse and I will work day in and day out. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm putting my all in it. You're going to get a fighter who's going to ensure Revere and Winthrop are in the front in this COVID-19 response. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Juan is going to be the next one to answer the question. Juan, do you need me to repeat the question?
I think we're all set. Thank you so much for your question. So I'm actually the only person on this stage that has ever been a frontline worker. Throughout college, I put myself through what I call a housekeeping scholarship and joined the ranks of my father cleaning ICU beds at Mass General Hospital. I worked alongside some of the brightest and bravest nurses and doctors, in particular during the Boston Marathon bombing. I knew then that they were essential frontline workers, what people are known now. In my capacity as a political coordinator for the largest frontline worker union in the country, and quite honestly, probably the largest just union in the country, I've been fighting for our communities like ours, where my union has over 1,500 members, to ensure that they had the proper personal protective equipment and that we got them a $1,200 stimulus check. Our communities have been sending folks into town, my father included. And the governor has decided that it was a smart idea to pack my father into wagons with more and more people by cutting transportation service. These are things that I'm going to tackle head on because my father's life and my mother's life, who was also a frontline worker, are worth it. Because they've been fighting for our communities and sticking their neck out for us. So we're gonna invest in our public infrastructure. We're gonna invest in our hospital. We're gonna invest in our community that has kept the food system going. So that is my commitment to you, because if they're safe, if our communities are healthy and we are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Jeff, your turn.
Yes.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. The Commonwealth has been hit hard by COVID-19, with the health and well-being of many that call Revere home being especially negatively impacted. What specific actions would you take as state representative to ensure the Commonwealth's COVID-19 response focuses on Revere and Winthrop?
Thank you. And thank you, Alicia, for the question. A couple of things that I would do right away as your state representative. The first I would do is urge the governor to mobilize the National Guard. Our military in the United States has proven time and time again that in times of crisis, the military can step up. We can say to them, today, we need to be in a hot spot somewhere in the world within 48 hours, and we can move heaven and earth to get troops and equipment there. I think we need to give this to the military who is trained to distribute this vaccine across the Commonwealth, to do it in an efficient and effective manner. The haphazard way in which we're doing it, some being distributed to local communities, some being distributed through hospitals, some being distributed through local pharmacies, I think is a chaotic way in which we're doing it. I think having the military do it, I think the governor could step up and mobilize the Massachusetts National Guard, put them in charge of it, and implement the plan so that the people of Revere and Winthrop, just like in the blizzard of '78 when I was a young boy, walking down Broadway Revere, and the old, right next to the Central Fire Station, used to be a Stop and Shop. And that Stop and Shop was converted into a military barracks. Why? Because Revere was under siege by weather, by snow, because of the blizzard. Well, we're under siege by COVID, and it deserves an equally aggressive response. So that's one of the things that I would do. The second thing I would do is I would reach out to our federal delegation and say, we need this money, not tomorrow, not next week, but we need the money now. They need to step up to cut the red tape, to make sure that Washington gives us this billions of dollars right now in stimulus money that's already been passed that hasn't been spent. We need to get access to that money so that we can use the resources at the state level to make sure that the people of Revere and Winthrop, and frankly across the Commonwealth, get these resources and get the vaccine if they so choose to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. The last one is Tino. Tino, do you need me to repeat the question?
I'm all set.
Okay.
As your state representative, I'll advocate for legislation that creates a one-stop online sign-up for COVID-19 vaccinations. I'll create a plan to coordinate with distributors to increase vaccination rates and get more vaccines administered in a safe and timely and efficient manner. And I'll require providers to proactively reach out to eligible recipients and schedule easy appointments. We are strong, resilient people, and I believe we're going to get through this pandemic. And as the only current candidate in this race that is a current elected official, I know it's on my mind every day. It's on my mind as a school committee member. It's on my mind as a chief of staff. And in Senator Feeney's office, I helped manage thousands of unemployment cases. And I've heard the fear in our constituents' voices, worried about how they're going to pay their rent or pay their mortgage. And that's why I support extending the eviction moratorium. And I also worked with our small business owners and assisted drafting legislation that allowed for alcohol with takeout and delivery orders. And I think our small businesses are resilient, and we grew this summer. Take a look at outdoor dining. It was effective. It kept small business open. It was fun. I think we need to use those tools and move forward so we can get out of this pandemic together. And I am truly confident with hard work and collaboration, we'll be out of this in the next, hopefully in the next few months.
Thank you, Tino. We have the next question is from Juan, and he'll answer it first, and then we'll go. Okay, each candidate here has stated that one of the main priorities is showing up and listening to their constituents and doing the work the people want and need. Given that a large population of Revere is native Spanish speakers, will you commit to making your office accessible to all voters by having a bilingual staff with at least one fully bilingual legislative aide? One.
Thank you for that question. When my parents and I immigrated here to the United States, I was in the only bilingual class in the entire school district. Today, over 52% of our students at Revere High, in the Revere public school system are first language Spanish speakers and or bilingual. That is the future of our city. That is the future of this district. We have to, if we are committed to ensuring that our communities have accessibility to government and that their voices are heard, we have to ensure that our offices are bilingual. I'm happy to say that while I do commit to hiring a bilingual staffer, I am also a bilingual speaker, so actually trilingual, as I speak both Spanish, English, and Portuguese. So I'll be able to talk to a broad range of our population. Absolutely, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Juan. Jeff, do you need me to repeat the question, or?
No, I hear the question. What I say is I'm not prepared to make a specific commitment about what language someone's going to speak, because as I go door to door, first I'm trying to learn Spanish and Italian right now. My kids are taking Spanish at Immaculate Conception, and I'm taking an online program to try to learn so that I can be a little bit more proficient. And maybe you and I want on the campaign trail, you can teach me a few things that Babel can't. As I go around Revere, it's not just our Spanish community, and it's not just our Portuguese community, but there's a tremendously large Moroccan community and Turkish community in Revere. And so I think that it's equally important that we make sure we open up doors of communication to them. And one of the things that I'll do is I'll reach out to leadership as part of being a new member and say, most state reps get one legislative aide, but I think it's important for this district that we recognize the diverse nature of who's in the district, and that we need people that can actually help communicate to people and see if we can get extra resources in the office so that we can have people that speak Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Moroccan. So French would do for many Moroccans, of course, and of course Turkish. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Tino, you're next. Do you need me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I'm good. Sure, I'll commit to having a legislative aide that is bilingual, because my campaign manager, Abby McHugh, is bilingual, and she has been on the ground in Michigan last year for the Biden-Harris ticket and is doing a great job in this campaign. So I have full faith in her. We've also had a number of Spanish-speaking phone banks to the district as well. So I want to make sure we represent, as a state rep, represent every single one of our constituents, regardless of race, gender, in economic station. Constituent service is something I'm very passionate about, because I believe government is here to help people. And I fell in love with it as an aide for Speaker DeLeo, where I received the education of a lifetime on how to fight for working families every day, and how to be available, and how to be accessible. And I'm ready to do that day one. When I was the speaker's aide, I remember the first few calls I got in that time was about, can you help my child with a recommendation to college? And then over time, over the last few years, it's called, can you get my child a bed? And that's why I think the number one issue the next state representative has to fight for is criminal justice reform and battle the opioid epidemic. That's why I'm honored to receive the endorsement from Sheriff Steve Tompkins, who I could partner with in this, because we believe that we need to invest in jobs and education and not jails and mass incarceration, and make sure that this epidemic is treated as addiction and not a criminal offense.
Thank you. Alicia, you're next. Do you need me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I'm all set, and I want to thank Juan for bringing up this question. I actually made this promise last night at our debate. I promised to have a multilingual staff. I have worked in offices that were multilingual, and I know the importance they are to integrate languages in all our services. I've said I want to have an open door policy. I've been running an open door campaign. Everyone knows my cell phone number. But traditionally, you know, that 9 to 5 office isn't an open door policy. We need to make sure that folks have accessibility to their legislators and their government in whatever shape and form that is. That's why I've called for the Massachusetts legislature to make sure that their website is multilingual, which it's not right now, and to make sure there's accessibility, because right now our folks don't have that in this state. That's why I'm proud that my website is in Spanish as well, and we're working on other languages as we speak. I've been working with and in community in Revere and Winthrop, with community organizers in the Latino community, in the Bosnian community, in the Turkish community, in the Moroccan community, here in Winthrop and Revere, really organizing to make sure that I hear directly from the constituents. Those who know me know I lead with and in community. I am a community organizer at heart. And that's the type of office I would have. And a core part of that is having a multilingual staff. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. The last question in this part of the debate comes from Jeff Turco, and he will give the first response. And the question is, assuming you are state representative, Jack or Jill from the district call you, and they have a family member in crisis due to substance use disorder. They can't find a treatment bed for their family member. What specific steps can you take to find a bed for Jack or Jill's family member? Jeff, you want to start us off?
Yes, thanks. You know, this is, to me, this is the most important issue affecting this district. There's not a family in this district who hasn't been affected by substance use disorder, whether it's them directly or whether it's through a family member. I've talked about this during the campaign, and one of the reasons I've talked about my personal experience with 3 of my siblings having died from overdoses, including 2 in the last 3.5 months. My 56-year-old brother in December, my 50-year-old sister in September. And one of the reasons I talked about this is to help build upon the efforts that someone like Mark Silvestri has led with, ending the stigma in the city. But one of the things I would do is, because of my correctional background, is I'm familiar with the organizations that are out there in the community that have beds, both publicly funded, privately funded. First thing I would do is reach out to my friends and colleagues in the police department to say, who do you have that has open beds? I'd reach out to the public health community. Who do you have? North Suffolk Mental Health is a great resource in this area that can help find beds for people. There are sober houses that are out, that are privately owned, that are out there, including one just in East Boston on Orient Ave, helping women transition away from substance use disorder and getting back into the community. I'm proud to have played a role in helping to make that property at Orient Ave happen just in the last couple of months. I'd reach out to my friends at the probation office, where I worked with day to day, shoulder to shoulder, when I was the special sheriff of Worcester County, and get ideas from them. And I'd work with the people in the courts that have direct day-to-day knowledge of how to find beds to make it possible to get people in a bed. Thank you.
Thank you. Tino?
Thank you.
Do you need the question
I don't need
repeated?
to repeat the question. And this isn't in a scenario for me. This is real life as an elected official in State House aid. I'm a supporter of a 72-hour hold after an addict is Narcaned. 72-hour hold means that that an addict has to be mandatory, sent to receive a bed mandatory for 72 hours. Nothing goes on your record. Nothing. It's not a criminal offense. It is just to help you get sober, help you get clean. I have personally driven friends, family members, and constituents to get a bed. If this situation happens and someone makes that call at 4:45 in the afternoon on a Friday in August when you're getting ready to go to the beach this weekend, I'll pick them up and make the call. It's what I've done. I would go through my phone contacts, call every officer I know, everyone in the sheriff's office, every single sober house and clinic in the area, in the district, and drive and have a bed. I've made the drive to Gosnell in confidential manner to make sure that a friend or a constituent has a treatment they need. And I trusted that my friend Jeff would do that as well. This is a serious issue, and it takes a full-time state representative with compassion, empathy, and the use of this in a confidential manner to go out there and fight for working families, whether it's with addiction, housing, or to help our small business owners.
You're next. Do you need the question repeated, or are you good?
No, I'm all set. Thank you. I stood next to my best friend in the world at her father's funeral when he was taken way too quickly by the disease of addiction. I, of course, when a constituent call at 3 a.m., midnight, will do whatever I can to make sure they get in a bed and they get the treatment they receive, whether that's calling North Suffolk, whether that's calling Sudi, whether that's calling CASA. But first and foremost, folks should not be having to make that call. Folks should not be having to make a call to their state representative to get a bed. We already have our main issue is that folks can't get a bed. We need to work on the root of this issue and work to expand accessibility, to expand these services. We have folks that are stretched way too thin that are doing this work, whether it's our friends, like Mark Silvestri with the Veterans Service Office in Winthrop, whether it's our friends here in Revere, whether it's our friends here in Winthrop. We need to make sure that we're critically investing in the folks that are doing this work to ensure that we don't have to call your state representative because of course we're all going to do that. I'm going to do whatever I can to drive someone to a bed, whether that's at 3 a.m. or midnight. But we need to make sure they're not in that situation. And having dealt with this with friends and family members, you're going to have a champion in me to make sure we have some creative legislation, some bold legislation, to make sure that we're fixing this issue holistically. Like I said, we shouldn't be putting Band-Aids on situations. COVID-19 exacerbated the substance use and the mental health crisis in our community. We should not go back to how we dealt with this in 2018 or 2019. We need visionary leadership. We need to put patients at the center of recovery. And that comes with bold and compassionate changes. And I'm ready to work hand in hand with our community to do that.
Thank you. Juan, your question, do you need to repeat it?
Yeah, all set. Thank you for the question, Jeff. I really appreciate it. First, Jack and Jill will call me at my personal cell phone number, 617-838-7098, to ensure that they have a personal touch when it comes to this important issue. When I worked for Senator Joe Boncore, I actually worked with him and Julie Newhall at the Substance Use Disorder Initiative to ensure that people had access to substance use resources that they need. You see, a lot of the people that enter our county jail systems are there because of substance use. And unfortunately, when Jeff was the superintendent at the Worcester County, which had the highest mortality rates in the whole Commonwealth, a lot of these people might have perished because, and we don't know why, because unfortunately, the jail, quote, refused to give them access to the facility's mortality reviews. So I'll be a leader on this. And like Alicia said, I'll be ensuring that we're rooting this from the bottom, that we're tackling this from the bottom. That's why I support the work of our good friend Mark Silvestri at the Veterans Services Office, dealing with our veterans who so often come back with battle scars that we just can't see. That's why I will continue committed to support the Revere Substance Use Disorder Initiative to ensure that that we are funding recovery coaches and resources for folks in need. That's why I worked with CASA as well to deliver funding for them. I'm committed to this issue, and as your state legislator, your next state representative, I will be fighting for you and your family to ensure that they have a helping hand on Beacon Hill.
Thank you, Juan. I sort of forgot one question before closing arguments. It was a question that we had sent out earlier. So if it's all right, I'll read it. Jeff will go first, and then it'll be Tino, Alicia, and Juan. And so the question is, please explain any measures that you think the state government should take to assist those most heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, with particular attention to those who have lost their jobs, tenants facing eviction, landlords who cannot meet their expenses, homeowners who cannot pay their mortgages, small business owners who face the prospect of losing their businesses, and COVID survivors whose long-term health has been affected by the virus. Jeff?
Yes. So thank you for the question. I know I lost the internet for a few minutes. I said, how did I miss this whole question and answer session? So I'm glad I didn't miss it. The first part of this question is, I'd work with that federal delegation. I've talked about this earlier, to make sure that the stimulus monies that are already available start to come down and be released immediately. Then I'd work with our congressional delegation to make sure that President Biden's proposed stimulus bill gets passed quickly, and that we get that money and we get it into the economy so that we can help the people of this area. At the Commonwealth level, some of the things that we can do once we get that money and with our own resources is we can create a Commonwealth companion program for the PPP to help businesses, to keep people employed. One of the other things that we can do is, there was a moratorium put on evictions, and there was a forbearance opportunity for homeowners to delay their mortgage. The problem with the forbearance opportunity was it only delayed the inevitable that the comeuppance that after 3 or 4 months of not paying your mortgage, then suddenly you had it. You had to pay it all at once. One of the things I would do is work with the banking community to pass some laws and regulations that require them to add that money to the end of a loan rather than forcing a homeowner to have to come up with the money after 3 or 4 months, because all we're doing is delaying the inevitable pain in foreclosure crisis that will be generated by the result of the failure to come up with a comprehensive plan in that area. The other thing I would do is I would walk this district and talk to people. Is our unemployment system is in shambles. We have some of the best minds in the Commonwealth, best technology companies and best technology schools in the Commonwealth. And we have the most antiquated, inefficient unemployment system in the country. It's a shame, it's a disgrace, and the people of the Commonwealth deserve better. One of the things I would do is work to insist that the Commonwealth take a lead on bringing in the engineers from MIT and from Harvard and from Worcester Polytech and have them help put in place a system that can serve the needs of the people in the Commonwealth. And the other thing I would do is I talk to the people on the ground who are affected by this and say, what do you need from us? I'm the only candidate that sent out a flyer to every voter in the district to say, tell me what you think are the main issues in this campaign so that I can learn from you. And we should do the same thing when it comes to the COVID response. Thank you.
Thank you. Tino, do you need the question repeated, or are you good?
No, I'm all set. And I actually think our Department of Family Assistance and our pandemic unemployment has been successful in this state so far during this pandemic, and it's helped thousands of people. But we need to make it more accessible and continue to give aid through this rebuilding time that we're entering after we reach a critical mass of vaccinations. As I said earlier, I will take all the tools I learned from Senator Feeney and Speaker DeLeo and be open and accessible, and that includes office hours to assist with every single constituent problem, including unemployment assistance. I support extending the eviction moratorium, as I said earlier. I believe right now the CDC guidelines is expected to end on March 31st. This is going to leave many vulnerable to eviction to no fault of their own. Circumstances cut out of their control because of this pandemic. At the same time, I also think we need to have benefits for homeowners that are struggling to make their mortgage payments. We also need to continue to help our small businesses in this district by, allowing, as I said earlier, the continue of outdoor dining. And like I said, I believe we need to create new revenue. And we'll see that right here in Winthrop and Revere, in my opinion, with releasing limits on sports betting, but it'll also help many in the industry, because I know there's a lot of folks in our district that had good high-paying jobs at Encore Casino.
Thank you, Tino. Alicia, you're next. Do you need the question repeated, or are you good?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, though. Thank you for this question also, and going back to it. This is an issue that is incredibly important to me. I've talked to countless people during this campaign that have lost their jobs, and so many of our small business owners are struggling just to get through this pandemic. And there are a couple things we can do. First is rental assistance. We have to ensure that Revere and Winthrop get their fair share of the millions of dollars that are coming from the federal government to Massachusetts for rental assistance, and ensure that those dollars are similar that are available to those that are struggling to pay their mortgage. At the end of the day, nobody should be without a place to call home, especially during COVID-19. Regarding the eviction moratorium, if the federal government does not extend this past March, the state must extend one. In 2020, the Commonwealth had a moratorium on evictions. Until the end of March, we have had a federal moratorium. And this is a real fear that people fear day in and day out, and we need to make sure that we're protecting them. And lastly is an economic recovery bill that doesn't just give big handouts to large corporations. We have to pass comprehensive economic recovery bill that provides our local small businesses with critical grants to ensure that they can thrive and not just survive. As our next state representative, I'll fight day in and day out to make sure Revere and Winthrop have their fair share, and that corporations like Amazon that don't pay their share don't receive big handouts. And I think this is extremely important. So I'm excited to work hard for it.
Thank you, Alicia. Juan, your turn. Do you need the question repeated?
Yeah, I think I got it. Thank you very much. So obviously our communities have been at the front lines of this pandemic, right? From staffing our supermarkets and maintaining our food system to staffing our hospitals and making sure that they're clean and that we're providing the high quality of care that we deserve. Our homeowners and our tenants need some aid. So we need to continue to extend the moratorium on the rents and provide rental assistance and mortgage assistance for folks to ensure that people can continue to stay safely in their homes and they're not displaced during this pandemic. Further, as businesses have been losing business, I've been a leader on this issue as the political coordinator for the largest labor union in the country to provide PPP loans that have kept the lights on and the adequate personal protective gear to ensure that workers can go back to work safe. I'm going to call on the legislature to ensure that we're expediting vaccination here in our district and that we're providing all the resources that we need and hold big polluter accountable like Wheelbrader and Massport that have skyrocketed our COPD and asthma rates, and that has exacerbated our COVID fatalities here. To ensure that there's mitigation money to support our small businesses and our communities here in our district. Thank you for the question.
Closing statements from each candidate, and we're going to go in reverse order from the opening statement. So the order would be Jeff, Juan, Alicia, and Tino. So we'll go to Jeff first for his closing statement.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I talked about this last night, but we've talked about a lot of big issues tonight: taxes, climate change, COVID. But this is a meat and potato district. This is a district with people in genuine need on a genuine day. I know that from personal experience. When I was a young boy growing up in Revere Ave, we lived a very privileged life. We had the in-ground pool in the yard. We had the house down the Cape. And all of a sudden, my parents got divorced. Our house was foreclosed on. We were going to be homeless. My mother picked up the phone and called Billy Reinstein, out in state representative, and said, "Bill, what do I do?" Bill Reinstein said, "Give me an hour, Carol." And an hour later, Bill Reinstein called and said, "Take the kids and go to 84 Walnut Ave." That was government working for me. That was government working for my family. That's the type of government that I grew up with in a working class community like Revere. That's the type of state representative I'm going to be, bringing that type of working class service to you, the people of Revere, when you're in need and you're in trouble. Second part of this is a historic race. Bob DeLeo, after 30 years of service, has left us to go on to bigger and better things, and now we're picking a new state representative. And it's equally historic because today I'm proud to announce that the Revere Police Patrolman Union, the Revere Police Superior Officers Union, the Winthrop Police Union, Patrolmen's Union, the Winthrop Fire, and the Revere Fire Unions have all endorsed my candidacy to be the next state representative, because they need and they see that we need bold leadership that will value and respect our law enforcement, public safety communities. And I'm proud to have the unanimous support of the team of public safety people that protect us every day. Finally, I bring with me the experience as the only father, the only husband, the only small business owner, the only former staffer in both the House and the Senate, and the only person in this race that ran a $50 million a year state agency. I bring that experience, that unique experience, and most importantly, I'm the only candidate in this race with deep roots in both Revere, 33 years of my life, and the last 16 years in Winthrop. I look forward to representing you as your next state representative. I ask you to vote for Jeff Turco on March 2nd. If you have any questions, 508-450-8843, or go to turcoforrep.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Juan, your closing statement?
Thank you for the opportunity again to Revere TV and the Revere Journal. I am proud to be the only Revere candidate because you, my fellow neighbors, have invested in me. The names aren't the big organizations, they're the local leaders. Patrick Keefe, Steve Morabito, Ira Novoselsky, Carol Ty, Susan Gravelisi, Stacy Rizzo. Not the political insiders. The people that have been delivering for this district their entire life. Further, those teachers that trusted in me to be their next state representative. Ms. Cherry, Ms. Matera, Ms. Consoli, Mr. Etoff, Mr. Kingston. All these wonderful people that have continued to invest in me and have put me on this stage today. If I have been successful at anything, it has been because you have been behind me 100% at everything that I do. I am truly humbled and honored to be here before you, to continue to fight for you, the working class people of this district. I'm honored because I walked these streets from the moment I landed at the corner of Harris and Beach Street to the moment I knocked on doors on Wave Ave, to the time I even crossed the border over to Winthrop to talk to voters there about the things that matter. Like a good paying job, paid family leave, and health care for every single person of the Commonwealth that is debt-free and not tied to work. Because if we learned anything from this pandemic is the moment that we leave the work and join the ranks of the unemployment line, we lose the access to the healthcare that we need to survive, and that can be no longer, especially in a community like ours with high asthma and COPD rates that have been exacerbated by big polluters like Willow Brader and Mass. We're going to hold them accountable because we're not the political insider, because we're the hardworking people of Revere and Winthrop, because we get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, punch that clock in, and clock out 12 hours later like my father does at 16 hours
10 seconds left.
or
One.
me at 12 hours later as the only frontline worker here. On March 2nd, I hope you will come and vote for me because I'll be working for you like I have been my entire life. Call me at 617-838-7098. Visit our website at juanforrep.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Alicia, your closing statement, if you could, please.
Once again, thank you to the Revere Journal and Revere TV and everyone that came together to discuss the critical issues facing Revere and Winthrop. And thank you to everyone that has worked tirelessly through this COVID-19 pandemic to make sure that we are all safe and healthy. As you all know, as we've heard tonight, there is a lot at stake in this election. We have some big shoes to fill. Speaker DeLeo was a tireless fighter for the people of Revere and Winthrop, and we can't thank him enough for a lifelong commitment to serving our community in the Commonwealth. As our next representative, I want to pick up where I left off, working in the House of Representatives, fighting for COVID-19 recovery, balanced budgets, investment in our schools, our people, our community, aggressive action to fight climate change, and tearing down the barriers that are preventing our veterans from receiving the highest quality care possible. We can never settle because when it comes to delivering on the issues that matter most to our community, we just cannot wait. One issue I have been a vocal champion of for my entire life is reproductive health and choice. I believe protecting reproductive rights means protecting immigrants, addressing poverty, and supporting workers. Make no mistake, our access to this fundamental, essential health care continues to be under attack in the Commonwealth. And as your next state representative, and as the first woman to represent the 19th Suffolk District, you can certainly guarantee I will always be a vocal and proud champion. I hope to be a mother someday, and I want to raise that family right here in the place I love. But to ensure the Revere and Winthrop that I grew up in is here and is even better for my future children and those of many in the community, we must take compassionate action. I was proud today to be endorsed by Emily's List, the nation's leading organization for women in politics. I like to say strong women built our community, and I am proud to say our campaign is powered by so many of them. These women are local leaders on the front lines, helping the Commonwealth and our country fight back from COVID-19. And because of COVID, women's workforce participation has been set back more than 3 decades. It's time to send a woman from the 19th Suffolk to the House of Representatives for the first time. This is not a part-time job. We need a fighter on Beacon Hill, someone who can roll up her sleeves
You have 10
and
seconds,
get to
Alicia.
work full-time on day one. I'd be honored to have your vote as our next state representative on March 2nd, and I look forward to working with you to create a brighter future for Revere and Winthrop. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Tino.
Thank you. The stakes could not be higher for our community in this election. And over the past 4 years, we have seen an all-out assault on the values that we share and care about. Through this COVID outbreak, it has put many working families and small businesses on the brink of collapse. We must work to keep workers in all frontline business and small businesses open through this pandemic. We need to ensure that every student in our public school system has an exceptional education, and it's going to prepare them for the 21st century head on. And we have to make sure that every person has access to quality and affordable healthcare. I have been actively involved in our community for the past decade, and I believe that I can make progress on some of the biggest challenges that we face. I bring a track record of results to the table, and as through thorough understanding of the importance of being accessible to constituents and responsive to the issues they bring. That's what I've done as a legislative aide for Speaker DeLeo, a chief of staff in the state Senate for Senator Paul Feeney, and deputy director of community affairs in the Middlesex Sheriff's Office. And not only will I focus on these issues every day on the campaign trail, but I'll do it as a state representative. Right now, experience matters, and I'm ready to work for you on day one. Please visit my website, tinoforrep.com. Call me on my cell phone, 617-874-7169. My name's Valentino Capobianco, and I want to be your next state representative. And I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday, March 2nd.
Thank you, Tino. Well, that concludes the forum for tonight. We want to thank the candidates and our viewers for joining us. All the candidates have been campaigning in non-traditional ways because of the pandemic. We urge all voters to get out and vote on March 2nd. We remind voters that mail-in ballots are an option, and there is still time to obtain an absentee ballot. And good luck, keep campaigning, and thank you guys for making the democratic process work here. Take care.
Thank you, Stephen. Have a good night.
Say good night.
Thank you.